She cleared her throat like she was about to present a quarterly report, not a breakdown of our marriage. "Not this, Halden," she said, clinking her glass with her manicured nail. "I'm done with the halfway life. You either accept who I am, or you can walk away right here, right now." There were 17 people in that room. I counted, my legs counted, my shame counted. And still, she said it like it was a TED Talk. The silence that followed her declaration was too perfect. Not a cough, not a clink. Not even the damn dog barked. This wasn't an argument. It wasn't a conversation. This was a performance. And I was the prop. The worst part? I should have seen it coming. The signs weren't just red. They were fluorescent, blinking, and screaming into a megaphone. But I ignored them because love is stupid like that. You think you're just going through a rough patch. You think she's stressed, or we've both been busy. Or, and this was my favorite lie, we just need a vacation. But no vacation fixes a woman who's already mentally gone. And Miria had left months before she said the words. You want to know when I knew I was invisible to her? It wasn't when she started working late every Friday. It wasn't when she started using AirPods for every call like the world needed secrets. It was the morning I found a coffee cup with lipstick on it in my car. I don't drink lattes, and I sure as hell don't wear Cherry Crush. When I asked her about it, she laughed. "Oh, that must have been Alyssa from work." I gave her a ride to her mechanic. But the receipt in the cup holder, it had been paid with her Apple Pay, and the timestamp? 11:47 p.m. She always said she was asleep by 10 o'clock. But I still said nothing. That became the theme of our marriage. She acted. I swallowed. So when she stood in the middle of the room during her cousin's engagement party, wearing that red silk dress she only wore when she wanted eyes on her, and gave me the ultimatum, stay or go, she already knew what she was doing. She knew I wouldn't make a scene. She knew I wouldn't yell. She knew I wouldn't beg. And she was right. I didn't say a single word. I just walked out the front door, past the shocked stares, past the DJ who actually paused the music, past her father's confused face and her sister's smirk, like she'd won some silent bet. I didn't take the car. I walked in those shoes she told me never matched anything. And I walked for 5 blocks before I cried. Not because I lost her, but because I never truly had her, and I was too weak to admit it until now. I ended up at a diner 2 miles away, the kind that never changes its menu and smells like burnt toast and freezer bacon. It was almost midnight. I sat in a booth with cracked red leather, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead like it was mocking me. I ordered pancakes I didn't eat. I stared at the maple syrup like it had answers. And for the first time in a decade, my phone didn't light up with a single message from her. I kept staring at the screen, waiting for a "where are you?" or even a "really?" But nothing came. Not a call. Not even a missed one. It was like she'd rehearsed this ending. And I was just late to the script. You'd think that would be the worst part. Realizing your wife doesn't care that you walked out on her in front of 17 people and a DJ who played love songs 2 minutes after. But no, the worst part came when I realized I had nowhere to go. No family nearby. No friends I hadn't lost touch with over the years. Mia was the social one. She kept the invitations coming. She planned the holidays. I was just the quiet guy in the background, the one people barely remembered by name. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my notes app and started writing. Not poetry, not a journal, just thoughts, honest ones. I typed out, "Why did I stay this long? What did I think would change?" And when I got to the hotel around 1 a.m., I still hadn't answered it. I booked one night at a budget inn using a backup card she didn't know about. It was one of those places where you leave your shoes on, even in the shower. I lay on the stiff mattress, still in my party clothes, and stared at the ceiling. And then, because I had nothing else to do, I started checking her social media. She had unfollowed me. No block, no message, just a quiet digital erasure, like I'd been archived. And then something even worse. I saw a tagged photo on her cousin's Instagram. Maria smiling, holding a glass of champagne, arm looped through Damien's. I hadn't noticed him at the party. He was there. Of course he was. She didn't give me that choice in front of her family because she was desperate. She did it because she was ready. because he was already there. That whole performance, that wasn't for me. It was for him. I zoomed in on the photo. His hand was on her lower back. She didn't pull away. She looked happy, unbothered, not like someone who just watched her husband leave. Couldn't breathe. I actually sat up and checked if the window opened just to get air. But it didn't. That was the moment I knew I was living in a different version of reality than the one she was in. I thought we were struggling. She thought we were done. I thought we needed fixing. She had already replaced me. And here's the part one still can't believe. Deep down, I knew. I knew she'd been lying for months. I knew the perfume on her coat wasn't hers. I knew the hushed calls in the bathroom weren't work. But I was too spineless to confront her. Too scared of hearing the truth said out loud. So, she beat me to it. She said the truth with her body, with her glass, with her public ultimatum, and she said it all without blinking. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going back to that house. Not yet. But I was going back inside it just once to get proof of everything I already suspected. And what I found inside our bedroom drawer at 2:14 p.m. that day made my stomach turn. Not because of what it was, but because of who it belonged to. I didn't go there to snoop. That's what I kept telling myself the whole drive. I even practiced it in the mirror above the sink in the motel bathroom before leaving. I'm just picking up a few things. I'm not here to start a fight. I'm not here to beg. I repeated that until it sounded mechanical, until I almost believed it. But standing in the doorway of our house, I didn't feel like someone retrieving a forgotten charger. I felt like a trespasser in my own life. The scent of her lavender diffuser still lingered in the hallway. The same one she claimed gave her migraines every time I turned it on. Strange how quickly those triggers vanish when you're the only one left behind. I walked through the living room, noticed 2 wine glasses in the sink. One with red lipstick around the rim, the other clean. She never wore lipstick around me. Said it made kissing messy. That was her word, messy. I used to think it meant she was low maintenance. Now I realized it meant she'd stopped trying. My clothes were folded on the couch, not in a suitcase, not in a box, just folded like laundry she didn't feel like finishing. And on top of the stack, resting almost theatrically, was a small envelope with my name on it. No, not Halden, just H. She hadn't called me that in years. I didn't open it. Not yet. My feet moved before my brain could stop them. Into the bedroom, into the closet, past the hangers with more space between them than I remembered. She had already cleared drawers, I could tell, but not all of them. The bottom one, hers, was ajar. It wasn't locked. Inside, beneath a crumpled scarf and a hairbrush with auburn strands still stuck in it, was a small black box. No label, just one of those sleek magnetic ones people use to store valuables, or secrets, or both. I opened it slowly and everything inside me clenched. It was a watch. Not mine, not hers. Definitely not cheap. Engraved on the inside in tiny cursive was a name I hadn't heard in 4 years. Grayson. My chest actually hurt when I saw it. Not because of the name itself, but because of the history behind it. Grayson was my former coworker, someone I used to carpool with. We worked together on a tech grant back when I was still at the university. He was charming, too charming, the kind of guy who always stood too close to people's wives. He had been to our house twice, once for dinner, the second time for my birthday. Mia had always said she thought he was sleazy. She couldn't stand him. She made a whole scene about him flirting with her in our kitchen and told me never to invite him over again. And now his watch was in her drawer. I lifted it out with 2 fingers like it might burn me. Underneath it was a photo, just a Polaroid, of her, not even trying to hide her smile, wearing that same red silk dress from the party. She was on a hotel bed next to a man whose face was cropped out intentionally, but his wrist, that same watch. I dropped the photo. My hands were shaking. Not in rage. Not in some Hollywood "I'm going to get revenge" way. No, I was just hollow. My fingers didn't even feel like they belonged to me. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the carpet and just stared at the empty bed. The same bed we used to sleep in, that I thought was sacred, that I once proposed in with candles and my awkward voice cracking. And now it was just a set piece in someone else's performance. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was this pathetic gasp. like my lungs couldn't handle the truth, like my body knew before I did. She hadn't just cheated. She had planned this. She choreographed it, rehearsed it, then forced me to watch the final act. And me? I was the understudy who never even got a line. I left the box exactly where I found it. I didn't take the watch. I didn't take the photo, but I did open the envelope before I left. Inside was a single line. "You never saw me, Halden." Not really. And I got tired of waiting. I drove away with her note still open in my hand, the ink starting to smudge from the sweat on my fingers. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to. I just couldn't. I felt like a man who had already drowned but was somehow still breathing. You think betrayal is loud. Screaming, breaking plates, punching walls. But no one tells you the worst kind is quiet. No warning. No grand moment. Just a whisper in your gut that keeps repeating. This wasn't love. This was theater. I pulled into the motel parking lot but didn't get out. I sat there for an hour. The engine off, the cabin hot and still. I kept rereading her words. "You never saw me, Halden." I whispered them aloud once just to hear how they sounded in my own voice. Cold, final, like she'd been waiting to say that for years. But here's what haunted me more than her words. The photo, that watch, Grayson. It didn't make sense. They hadn't spoken in years. Or so I thought. I needed to be sure. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. I just couldn't keep walking around in this fog of lies, bumping into new ones every hour. So, I texted someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. Toby, my younger brother. We hadn't been close lately. A few years back, he left town after some falling out. I didn't really understand. Something with Mia. I was too distracted at the time to push. He said something about boundaries and space and then just stopped coming around. I figured he was dealing with his own stuff. Maybe he was. But after what I just saw, after the watch, the drawer, the staged humiliation, I couldn't ignore the timing anymore. I just wrote, "Can we talk? I think I was wrong about a lot of things." He replied within 5 minutes. "Meet me at the old high school field." After dark, the place was abandoned now. Budget cuts killed the school years ago, and all that remained was an overgrown football field, a rusted bleacher, and a scoreboard stuck at 0-0. It was the kind of place that once echoed with life but now only spoke in wind and silence. That night, it felt like walking into a memory I didn't ask for. He was already there, leaning against the railing. Older than I remembered, rougher around the edges. He didn't smile when he saw me. "I was wondering when you'd finally wake up," he said. I didn't answer, just sat beside him. We didn't speak for a full minute. Then I said it. The question I didn't want to hear myself ask. "Did something happen between you and Maria?" He didn't look at me, just rubbed the back of his neck like the words physically hurt. "You really want the truth?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He turned to me, his gaze sharp and tired. "She came on to me, Halden. Twice. First time, I thought she was drunk. Second time, I knew she wasn't. I told her no. Told her to stay away. She told me if I said anything, she'd convince you I was obsessed with her. Said you'd never believe me. So I left. The wind picked up then. Or maybe it just felt like it because everything inside me collapsed in that moment. I stared straight ahead at the empty scoreboard, trying to keep my breathing even. I didn't sleep with her," he added quickly. "But she wanted me to. I think she wanted to ruin everything, including us." I covered my face with both hands. I felt sick. "She told me you hated me," he said quietly. "That you said I was a screw-up, a parasite. I believed her. And you believed her about me, didn't you?" I nodded without looking up. "I was so stupid," I said, voice breaking. "I let her build a world around me, and I never questioned why I was always alone in it." Toby stood and offered me his hand. I hesitated and then took it. "She's not done," he said. "If you're smart, you'll get ahead of her." "What do you mean?" But he was already walking away. I sat there for a long time after he left, listening to the creak of the empty bleachers. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of her, not because of Toby, but because I realized I'd been living in a story she wrote for me, and I had no idea how many characters she'd already cast. And then I remembered something small, something I hadn't thought about in years. A message on an old email I dismissed back then, from a name I hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't from Grayson. It was from someone else entirely. And that's when I realized this wasn't a love story that fell apart. It was a setup from the very beginning. By the time I got back to the motel, I had forgotten how to breathe without second-guessing myself. The air felt too thin, the lights too yellow. I couldn't even bring myself to sit on the edge of the bed. I paced for nearly an hour, playing back every memory with Mia like a broken tape. Every smile, every phrase, every "I love you." I wondered how many of those had been rehearsed. How many had been spoken only because they served her version of the truth. But it was the email that haunted me now. 3 years ago, I got a message from a name I didn't recognize. The subject line was strange. "You don't know me, but you need to read this." I remember deleting it after opening it for 3 seconds. I never even read past the first line. Back then, I told myself it was spam, probably someone trying to stir up drama, and Mia had already told me to be careful with jealous old friends who might be trying to sabotage our happiness. It was still in my trash folder. I don't delete things completely, a weird habit I developed after losing an entire project in grad school because of an accidental empty bin click. So, I opened my old inbox, typed the sender's name, Kellen Shaw, and there it was, still sitting there like it had just been sent. I clicked it open, bracing for nonsense, but it wasn't nonsense. It was a full message. "Halden, you don't know me, but I dated Mia 10 years ago. You probably don't know she was engaged before you. She told me she lost the ring. She didn't. I saw it in her dresser when I came by to pick up my stuff. She lied to me, lied to my family, and then disappeared with money from my account. You don't need to believe me. Just ask her about the San Diego trip she took alone in 2012. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't in San Diego. I'm not writing this to get revenge. I just figured someone should warn you. Kellen Shaw." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. I had never heard of Kellen. She told me she had a serious boyfriend before me but said he cheated on her. Said she was broken when I met her, still healing. She even cried the first time she told me that story. Now I wondered how many of those tears were real. I read the email again and again. Then I opened her old photo folders. Most of them were empty. She was the type to curate everything online and delete the rest. But one subfolder hadn't been touched in years. It was buried under a random name, work_204 documents. That's where I found it. A photo of Miria smiling, cocktail in hand, not in San Diego, but in Cabo San Lucas, with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, tan, dark hair, mirrored sunglasses, his hand around her waist, her face tilted up toward him like the sun rose from his chest. It was date-stamped July 2012, exactly when she told me she had gone to clear her head after a difficult breakup. And then it hit me. She didn't just cheat on me. She had trained for it, rehearsed, refined the art of manipulation. She didn't stumble into infidelity. She was fluent in it. I closed the laptop slowly as if it might explode if I moved too fast. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken at that moment. I was disturbed, like I had just learned someone close to me had lived under another name, built an entire life out of parts stolen from others. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, a blueprint, and I was just the next house she built and planned to burn down when it suited her story. I walked outside for air. The motel parking lot was quiet except for the sound of a vending machine humming. I leaned against a concrete wall, staring at nothing, letting it all settle. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The guy from her office, Jasper, the one she always said was annoying. I hadn't thought much of him until now. I remembered once picking her up when her car battery died. Jasper had been standing way too close to her when I pulled in. When I mentioned it later, she brushed it off and changed the subject. And I, like the idiot I was, let it go. But now I had to know. I had to see how deep this rabbit hole went. I wasn't trying to save our marriage anymore. That was long gone. But I was going to find the full truth. And if I had to unravel the last 10 years of my life to do it, so be it. I didn't sleep again. That made it the third night in a row. I lay in the dark motel room, fully clothed, staring at the faint green glow of the alarm clock that blinked 2:41 a.m. like it was warning me. I tried counting the cars outside, counting the tiles on the ceiling, counting all the reasons why I still felt ashamed when I was the one who'd been betrayed. But that's the problem when you've been manipulated for so long. You stop trusting even your own anger. You start thinking maybe you caused it. Maybe you weren't enough. Maybe it's your fault that someone else decided to throw you away like a grocery receipt. That morning, I found myself parked across the street from her office. I didn't know what I was doing there. I wasn't stalking her. I wasn't planning anything. I think I just needed to see her world from the outside. The place she went to every day while I sat at home believing she was building something for us, when in fact she was rehearsing the next scene without me. And then I saw him, Jasper. He walked out of the building casually, coffee in hand. And then exactly 15 seconds later, Maria followed. She didn't see me, but I saw her smile. That same smile she used to give me at brunch on Sundays when I surprised her with blueberry pancakes. That intimate, quiet smile that said, "You're mine." Only now it wasn't for me. She handed him something. Couldn't tell what. He laughed, touched her wrist in that deliberate way men do when they want to act like they're not touching you. She didn't flinch. I took a photo. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. Maybe because I needed to stop pretending I didn't know. Then I left. Back at the motel, I finally opened a folder I'd ignored for days. A collection of old texts and emails I'd saved from the early years of our relationship. At the time, I thought it was sentimental. Now I realize it was evidence. Every one of her messages followed the same rhythm. Praise, reassurance, suggestion, correction. It was never about what I wanted. It was always about what she wanted me to believe I wanted. "Halden, you're too thoughtful. I love that about you. But don't overthink this dinner. Just trust me. I'll handle everything. Don't call your brother tonight. Let's keep the energy just between us. You don't need to share all your thoughts with coworkers, baby. Some things are just ours." She didn't support me. She isolated me and I let her. And the worst part? I thanked her for it. I thanked her for helping me simplify my life. I thanked her for protecting me from negativity. I didn't even notice when my circle shrank down to just her. When my hobbies became our plans. When my opinions turned into, "Whatever you think is best, Maria." This wasn't just a betrayal of fidelity. This was a full-scale demolition of my identity. And I had applauded her the whole way down. I closed the laptop and sat in the bathroom with the light off, just trying to sit in silence. But even silence isn't safe when your thoughts are screaming. So, I did something I never thought I would do. I called my old therapist. He hadn't heard from me in over 4 years. I didn't even leave a full message. Just said, "It's Halden. If you have time, I could use 10 minutes. He called back within 30. We talked, and I'll be honest, I cried through most of it. But in that hour, I realized something that changed everything. He didn't ask what Maria had done. He asked me what I had tolerated. And when I couldn't answer, when I stuttered and reached for justifications, he said one sentence that ripped me open. "You weren't chosen, Halden. You were targeted." Those words landed in my chest like a brick through stained glass. Because for the first time, it all made sense. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She had never been in love. She picked me because I was soft. I was predictable. I was moldable. I wanted peace more than pride. And I gave her everything. Now she was erasing me quietly, efficiently, like I was just another phase in a life built on performance. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how much a broken man can still remember. Especially when that man finally stops lying to himself. And I remembered something from 2 years ago. A locked black journal I once found in the attic while organizing old storage boxes. She had snatched it from my hands, said it was from high school and that it was too embarrassing to read. I laughed, called her dramatic, and never mentioned it again. But now I knew exactly where I had to go next. Back to that attic. Because if what I suspected was true, that journal didn't contain high school poetry. It contained a map, and I had no idea what it would lead to. But I was finally ready to find out. The attic was colder than I remembered. Dust clung to every box like mold, and the bulb overhead flickered like it resented being turned on. I stood in the center of the wooden floor, staring at the old travel bin she once called her memory trunk. I had laughed at that label when we moved in. "You mean the box of junk you can't throw away?" I joked. She smirked and told me it held her formative years. She never said they were forging years. The black leather journal was buried under a faded college hoodie and an envelope of Polaroids I didn't recognize. I lifted it out like an artifact. And oddly enough, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't filled with poems. It was filled with people, names, dates, symbols, a list column organized of men. Some had stars beside them. Others were scratched out. Notes written in sharp, efficient language. Emotional. Too easy. Lie to his wife. Good potential. Clingy. Abort. Excellent at gaslighting. Watch him. Halden. High empathy. Per boundaries. Easy to maintain. I stared at my own name. I read that line over and over until the ink blurred. There were 10 names before mine. 3 after. The entries stopped 3 years ago. Some of them had towns next to them. One had a hospital code. Another, a P.O. box. One simply said, disappeared. Close call. This wasn't a diary. This was tracking, selection, execution. She wasn't hurt. She was strategic. I felt my knees wobble. So, I sat on the attic floor and kept flipping through the pages. Halfway through, I found a folded map. It was hand-drawn. Circles over places she'd lived and lines connecting them. Not cities, people. She had moved from man to man like on a chessboard, every 3 years roughly, sometimes less, sometimes more. Until me. I was her longest project. A test subject she never got bored of. Or maybe one she got lazy with because I made it too easy. That's when I heard a noise downstairs. Keys. She was home. The moment I heard the keys in the door downstairs, my body moved on instinct. I shoved the journal back into the bin, buried it beneath the hoodie, and turned off the attic light. I didn't even breathe. I crouched at the top of the steps and listened. She was humming. She always hummed when she thought she was alone. Some wordless melody I used to find soothing. Now it sounded like a virus seeping through the floorboards. Her heels clicked softly across the hardwood. The familiar rhythm of a woman who had walked through that house 1,000 times, never once wondering if the walls had started to remember things she tried to hide. I waited until I heard her in the kitchen opening the fridge. I slipped down the stairs and stood in the hallway just outside the entry. She didn't notice me right away. She was pouring wine, still in her blouse from work, sleeves rolled, hair pinned perfectly. She looked like a picture of control, of routine, of someone who never thought for a second she'd ever be discovered. When she turned and saw me, she startled only for a second. Then the smile, that same flawless, composed smile. "Halden," she said. "You're here." I nodded slowly. "You didn't think I would be?" She tilted her head. "Honestly? No. Not after the party." I watched her closely. Not one flicker of guilt. No tremble in her voice. No defensive body language. It was like we were talking about the weather. "I came back for a few things," I said. "You weren't supposed to be here." "Lucky me, then." She took a sip of wine. "Unless you came for something more dramatic." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked past her down the hall and into the study. She followed after a moment. I placed the folded photo of her and the man in Cabo on the desk. Then the snapshot I'd taken of her with Jasper, and finally the envelope with the name Kellen Shaw written in my handwriting across the front. Her smile cracked just slightly. Still, she said nothing. I looked her in the eyes and finally asked the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. "Why me?" There was a long pause. Then, incredibly, she sat down in the chair across from me and crossed her legs like we were in a job interview. "Because you made it easy," she said plainly. "You didn't ask hard questions. You didn't push back. You believed in love stories. That's the most dangerous trait in any man, Halden. Hope. It makes you stupid." I should have felt fury, rage. But what I felt was something colder, more final. Vacancy. "Okay," I whispered. Okay. Okay? She asked, her brow lifting. That's it. I stood, picked up the envelope again, and tapped it twice on the edge of the desk. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady. You're going to sign the divorce papers. I've already emailed you. You're not going to contest anything. No property, no alimony, no delays. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. If you do, I said, the contents of that journal you hid in the attic go to every single name you wrote down. Every man, every place, every lie. You built your life on ghosts. I'll wake them all up. She blinked, and for the first time since I met her, Mia didn't know what to say. No rage, no threats, no fake tears, only silence. I walked out. I didn't look back. She didn't follow. That night, I drove until my gas tank was nearly empty. I ended up at a roadside diner 3 towns over, sat at the counter, ordered pancakes I didn't eat, and smiled to myself. Not because I was healed, not because I was happy, but because for the first time in my adult life, no one was controlling me anymore. And silence, it turns out, is the loudest goodbye of